When is marketing just great promotion, and when is it a flat-out lie? That's exactly the question that General Motors had to answer about this 1976 Cadillac Eldorado. Hi there, Rick DeBrule with another chapter in the automotive evolution here once again at the Martin Auto Museum in Phoenix. As you can see, it is a huge collection of wonderful cars, of more than 170 in total, and we're always getting in new cars, it seems like, just about every week. So there's always something new to see. And we'll talk about this particular car in just a moment, because this is an interesting, very legal, complicated chapter in the automotive evolution. But first, make sure you like and subscribe down below. And of course, let me know what I got right and what I got wrong in your comments, or if you have some fun stories about driving around in a Cadillac just like this one. All right, I'm going to get to the legal complicated story in a moment, but first, let's talk a little bit about the history of the Eldorado market Cadillac. The Cadillac Eldorado debuted in 1953 as a limited production convertible for the brand's 50th anniversary. Now, over the next decade, it evolved into a regular production model, often serving as a high-end trim with distinctive styling. In 1967, the Cadillac was completely redesigned as a front-wheel drive coupe, setting it apart from all the other Cadillacs. Now, over those years, sometimes the Eldorado stood alone in the Cadillac world. Other times, it was kind of a sub-line from some of the other models. When this particular generation began in 1971, it gained a new body and it reintroduced a convertible version, which leads us to the problem. You see, convertible sales were dropping off in the 1970s. Manufacturers were questioning whether it was worth spending so much extra money to build a car with limited appeal. And then there were also safety concerns. After all, you're not exactly very well protected in a rollover accident when you've got a convertible. So Cadillac decided the 76 convertible would be its last. It even marketed the Eldorado convertible as the last American convertible. The head of GM in a news release said he thought the convertible was going to go the way of the rumble seat, extinct. And the campaign worked. It didn't just get attention. It boosted sales. Instead of selling 8,000 or 9,000, they sold more than 14,000 convertibles that year. And many, they went to collectors who believed that claim, thinking it was going to go up in value. However, the statement also led to legal trouble. A few years later, other automakers began producing more convertibles again, and by 1984, Cadillac itself brought back a convertible version of the Eldorado. But some buyers of those 76 models, they felt misled by the original advertising. A class action lawsuit was filed, claiming Cadillac had used false or deceptive marketing. Now, ultimately, the suit was dismissed, and I have read that some of the folks involved were offered discounts toward the purchase of a new Cadillac. But the case really showed how marketing claims could have long-term consequences for both the buyers and the manufacturers. Let's take a walk around and look at our 1976 Cadillac Eldorado, and I like to start with his hood ornament standing loud and proud on what is an absolutely massive hood. Underneath that hood is a 500 cubic inch engine that we'll talk about in just a moment. But let's talk about the overall size of this thing. It is 224 inches. That's 19 feet long. If you compare that to a modern Cadillac, let's go into the SUV range. An Escalade. A standard Escalade is not this long. It's only 211 inches long. Now, if you do opt for the ESV, the extended wheelbase, the longer version of the modern Escalade, that is 3 inches longer, 227 inches. But you also have to remember, you're getting a massive cargo area, big, huge third row. This just has 2 rows of seats, although it does have a truly massive trunk. Now, if you remember in 1976, that was also the bicentennial year, so they offered a bicentennial edition for this 1976 car. They only offered 200 of them since it was the 200th anniversary. You got pinstriping on the hood that I believe came in red and blue. There were a few other red and blue accents around the car. There was also, I think, a gold plaque that you got as well. But once again, limited to just 200, although I think everybody who was buying a Cadillac convertible Eldorado back in those days thought they were getting something special. If you compare this to the Lincoln Continental Mark V that was on the market at the same time, this is actually a little bit longer. But what's significant to point out is you could not get a convertible in that Lincoln Continental. That was only available on the Cadillac. Same was true for the Chrysler offerings. Chrysler was really focusing more on the 4-door. I think they were actually slightly longer in 1976. But they were really pitching the Eldorado as the personal luxury car as opposed to the four-door car, which was long and had plenty of room for people inside. I love the styling on this, especially these, the front fenders. It has a kind of like a Lincoln Continental kind of look to it. Not a lot of changes between 1975 and 1976, just some very minor things. I think the taillight bezels, that kind of thing, this egg crate grille. But once again, you look at how massive this thing is. And remember, it's just two doors, really a personal luxury car, all about the two people driving down the street in that front seat and getting everybody's attention. If you were buying a Cadillac in the mid-1970s, this is probably exactly the interior that you wanted. It was roomy, it had quiet operation. It had features that really reduced the effort of driving. It was built for long-distance comfort and low-stress operation. Everything, all the controls were easy to reach. Plenty of storage space in the trunk and in the cabin as well. Compared to Cadillacs from the early part of the decade, the 76 interior really featured refinements rather than major changes. In fact, this dash layout first showed up in 1971, and even that was really just a refinement of the 1970 model. Seating, of course, well, it was wide, very cushioned. I'm not sure you'd call this a 40-60 split. It's almost like a 45-55 split. Climate control, well, that was automatic on most trim levels. You also got the Cadillac Twilight Sentinel feature, an automatic headlamp system. We're used to that today, but pretty creative back then. Options included an AM/FM stereo, 8-track, or you could even get a CB radio, the ultimate in in-car entertainment and communication. And while the standard 1977 Cadillac went more compact, the Cadillac Eldorado would hang on to this big, huge, roomy interior for another 2 years. It was a formula that had worked for a long time. One thing I do want to point out, because this is a front-wheel drive car, you didn't have a transmission tunnel down here. As a result, you actually had more room to spread out with your legs. Another thing I want to point out is this particular car that's here at the museum has less than 5,000 miles on the odometer, meaning it is a true survivor. It has never been restored. There's a little bit of cracking here and there in terms of the interior, but if you want to see what a Cadillac would have looked like brand new, well, if you just kind of not look at those cracks, this is almost exactly what it would have looked like back in 1976, a true survivor. This hood isn't just massive, it is really heavy. The convertible wasn't the only thing that was going to be going away after 1976. You are looking at the swan song for what may be the biggest V8 engine ever offered in a mass-produced automobile here in the United States during the modern era. The 500 cubic inch Cadillac V8. Now, Cadillac has a long history with V8 engines. It goes all the way back to 1915 when it introduced the first mass-produced V8 here in the United States. Through the years, Cadillac developed a reputation for smooth-running, high-displacement V8s. They were designed for comfort and quiet performance. But this engine, well, this is a beast. 500 cubic inches, definitely the largest production engine ever offered in a passenger car, I believe, in the modern era. It debuted in 1970 and initially pumped out 400 horsepower. But things changed. In 1976, when this car was built, the output for this 500 cubic inch engine was down to just 190 horses. Part of the drop was due to the fact that they started looking at net ratings versus gross horsepower ratings. But the bigger problem was simply trying to come to grips with both emissions and mileage concerns. When the 500 cubic inch engine was first built, it had a compression ratio of 10-1. By 76, it was down to 8.5-1. That impacted things. But while it may not have had killer acceleration, it did have Cadillac smoothness. It had consistent torque throughout the range, which meant great cruising. Paired with a turbo hydromatic automatic transmission, it was really exactly what most Cadillac buyers really wanted in 1976. Now, 76 was the end of the line for this engine, this 500 cubic inch, because Cadillac downsized its engines along with its other models. 77 Caddy would have a 425 cubic inch engine, and horsepower slightly boosted to 195. Of course, 2 years later, well, that would change completely. Eldorado would go to a 350 cubic inch engine, and the horsepower would drop again down to 170. Although that car was substantially lighter, went from more than 5,000 pounds to I think less than 4,000 pounds. Still, back then people would have been shocked to find out that Cadillacs made today are closing in on almost 700 horsepower. From 190 all the way up to 7 in a smaller engine. Once again, the Cadillac V8's delivering in a big way. Well, the convertible may have disappeared after 1977. For the most part, the Eldorado pretty much stayed the same. Even while Cadillac was in the process of downsizing its other cars, the Eldorado continued to live on in what we'll call the land yacht neighborhood. But that changed in 1979. That was the year that the Eldorado became significantly smaller. It lost 20 inches in overall length, lost more than 1,000 pounds in weight, had a more squared off body. But sales showed that people liked the change. Let's go back to 1976, this car. They sold about 50,000 Eldorados that year. In 1979, that jumped to 67,000 with the new body style. And Eldorado's best years were in the mid-80s when they were selling 75,000 a year. But this car right here, well, this is truly the end of an era, the last massive parade float convertible Eldorado. And while the claim that it was the last American convertible may have prompted lawsuits, the reality is buyers got exactly what they wanted: a land yacht that was perfect for cruising.